Hi everyone, welcome to our PT Plus online lessons. Now, the main topic for today's lesson is listening multiple choice, choose single, and choose multiple answers. So these are these two question types, and we will be analyzing their score criteria because they are quite similar in terms of their scoring criteria, in terms of their skills and strategies. Okay, so today we're going to be analyzing their score criteria to understand the key strategies to studying and approaching these two question types. And this includes things like how should we be managing our time when we're studying, how should we be managing and allocating our time in the actual exam, and what is the level of accuracy we want to aim for so that we can make sure we get our final results that we want in the end. Okay, so firstly, let's talk about the key strategy to maximizing your scores here. All right. Now, firstly, multiple choice, single and multiple answers, they're not that easy questions, okay? Because you might have to note take, you will have to process a lot of information, okay, when it's listening. Then you'll need to compare this sort of information and your understanding to the options before you make your best choice. Okay, so this is not that easy. And even with choose multiple answers, it means that you'll have to make a few, multiple judgments as well. And overall, this is quite a time consuming process. But here, we're actually only recommending less than 10 seconds to decide on whether you tick each choice or not. Now, why is that? Okay, because if you have a look at this, they are only worth 2% or 4% in the case of multiple choice answers. Okay, it's only worth 2 or 4% of your entire listening section, and this is an extremely small percentage. Now, what is bigger? Okay, the bigger portions are here. Highlight incorrect words, fill in the blanks, write from dictation, and summarize spoken text. And we talked about this in the previous lesson already, and they are worth so much more. Okay, so we want to be saving more of our time for these question types over here. And what's more important is that you'll realize that these question types are worth, number one, they're worth more. Number two, they're actually easier to get points from. Why? Because highlight incorrect words and fill in the blanks, these are actually relatively easier question types compared to multiple choice. Now, write from dictation is actually also a little bit easier, and write from dictation has a much higher exam repetition rate. So the questions repeat themselves quite often. It's quite high. So it actually makes it much easier, if we prepare for this well before the exam. In the exam itself, the questions have a high repetition rate, so it makes it a lot easier for us because we would have seen those questions before, and it's easier to get those points. Whereas for multiple choice, number one, you have to process a lot of information, so it's not as easy. Number two, the exam repetition rate is not high at all. Okay, so in comparison, it's so much harder to even get that 2% or 4%. Okay, whereas this 21% is actually a lot easier to get. Now, finally, summarize spoken text is definitely one of the harder ones in terms of your listening. Okay, especially your listening ability to pick out those main points. But number one, it's worth so much more. And number two, also, okay, you are firstly given, you can use a template in summarize spoken text. And number two, the exam repetition rate is also really high. So you can prepare for it before the exam as well. Okay, whereas in multiple choice, you can't really expect what the questions are going to be like. Okay, so keep in mind this strategy over here. All right, number two. Okay, just now we talked about the time strategy, right? Remember that single answer, so choose single answer, okay? The audio length is actually between 30 to 60 seconds, okay? It can be a quite short piece, 30 seconds, but it can go up to 1 minute. Now with multiple answers, it can go from 40 seconds all the way up to 90 seconds. So then what is our recommended time to do the question, okay? This is after the audio finishes. The amount of time that you have to do the question is about 10 to 15 seconds per choice. Okay, now definitely keep it less, 10 seconds at most. So let's say if you've got, a 30-second single answer, then you want to be at most using about 10 seconds to sort of decide this choice. Am I ticking it or am I not ticking it? Once you've ticked the answer, move on already. Okay, remember that the main point here is don't overspend your time. If you're going to overspend your time, you'll affect the later question types that are worth a lot more. Okay, now let's also talk about your target accuracy. Okay, so these over here are your bands that you may potentially be aiming for. Okay, and what this means over here is that if you want to achieve a 79 in listening, okay, there are a few requirements. The first one is you must first achieve 79 in speaking first. Usually that is the case because speaking gives you 30%, gives your listening another 30%. Okay, so you want to be getting as much of that 30% as you can from speaking in the first place. All right, so number one is definitely work on your speaking first, and your speaking needs to be of a certain level. If your speaking is always stuck at 50, okay, no matter how well you do in listening, you're probably not going to get 79 in listening still in the end because your speaking is just dragging you down. All right, so number one, work on your speaking. Number two, assuming that your speaking is all right, is doing okay, tracking all right, then what you want is to have an average accuracy of about 82% for your entire listening section. Okay, so this is the average aim for the entire listening section. Now, what this means is that if you are achieving, let's say for the question types that are worth a lot more, your top 4 question types, and you should know this by now, your top 4 listening question types, what they are, make sure you know these. Now, if in these top 4, you are already achieving, let's say, a 85% average accuracy, then this basically means that your multiple choice, you can have a much lower accuracy rate and you will still be achieving this 82% and you'll still be fine as well. Because a multiple choice is definitely one of the harder ones to get points from. Okay, so you want to be getting more points from the top 4 question types that are worth more that we saw before. Let me just switch back. These 4, you want to be getting more marks, okay, on from these question types here because they are number one, worth more, and number two, they are easier to get marks from as well. Okay, so now let's dive into the scoring criteria for each of these tasks. And there are a few definite key things that we always want to make sure we keep in mind. Okay, now the first thing is let's look at multiple answers. Okay, with multiple answers, the first thing we want to point out is that the minimum score is 0. Okay, so basically the worst thing that can happen is you get 0. All right, so regardless of whether or not you're sure about anything, always choose at least one answer. Always answer the question. Always pick one. You never know. You might be lucky. For multiple answers, if let's say there are 5 options and you just pick one, you have a 20% chance of getting that right. That's better than not selecting anything. If you don't choose anything, there is just no way you're going to get any marks ever. But if you choose one, you will have a 20% chance of getting maybe a mark. Okay? Now, the thing about multiple choice that you need to watch out for is that if you select more than one, remember that there's definitely more than one correct answer. There might be 2 correct answers, there might be 3 correct answers, especially if you've got 7 options, then you might have 3 correct answers. Okay. But if you're selecting more than one, points will be deducted for incorrect options chosen. Okay, so this means that only select, choose one, always choose one, but choose more than one only if you are super, super sure. Because what happens is that let's say you choose one and it is the correct answer, right? But then you're not sure about the other one and you choose to have it in anyway and you choose it, right? Now, if this option was wrong, you will get -1 for it. So this 1 mark that you got here, -1 for the other option that you pick, you'll end up with 0 again anyway, right? So it will actually penalize you for an incorrect response, okay, if you choose extra. All right, so always choose at least one because you can't go into -1, right? If let's say the answer that you choose is wrong, okay, it won't minus off your mark for you because you only chose one anyway and the minimum score is 0. Okay, so always choose one. But if you have to choose more above it, okay, if you choose more than that, make sure that you are really sure about those options before you select it, or else there is a penalty for it. Okay, Now, with single answer, it's very straightforward then. It's just 1 or 0, okay? So since the minimum score is 0, okay, regardless, always just make a guess and pick 1 because you will still have a certain percentage of just even being lucky and getting that right. Okay, so a quick summary again, all right? For both multiple choice or a choose multiple or choose single, we always do one thing at least. We always choose one answer at least. Always, always. Okay. Now with multiple answers, okay, we only choose extra stuff only if we are really, really sure. If you're not sure, don't pick it because you might get penalized and you might just lose all your marks altogether and you'll end up with 0 anyway. Okay, so that is definitely when you're doing this question, multiple choice questions and listening, definitely take note of this. Always just pick one. If you run out of time, pick one anyway. You could be lucky. Okay, but don't choose more than one unless you are super sure. For multiple choice, choose multiple answers. Okay, all right, so that's it for this lesson about the score criteria and things you need to take note of. Make sure you take down the strategy, make sure you take down the time recommendation, make sure you know what you should be picking or how many you should be picking, and under what circumstances should you only pick more than one answer. All right, so I'll see you again next time on PT Plus.